Welcome, folks and friendly fiends, to my very first episode of Making Word Monsters, the vlog but not vlog series where I track my works in progress, the things that I've written, the things that I've read, the things that I've watched, basically all of the relevant things in my life as an author and now as a YouTuber. Why monsters, you might be asking? Well, because little felt monsters are cute, and sometimes pulling the words out of the ether and out of my brain feels like birthing a monster. So, while I word vomit the details of my life, I will be stitching a tiny little felt monster who will represent my successes and attempted successes. That is so much better than failures, right? Anyway, this particular episode of Making Word Monsters, I am going to talk about something a little different. Since I haven't really been writing much over the last couple of weeks while I've been preparing to launch and then launching my YouTube channel, I thought I would talk about the actual launch and all of the things that have gone into it, which has taken arguably months to create. Several months. Months of attempted successes, and now a few successes. Anyway, the one thing that I did learn about launching a YouTube channel is that it's a lot like launching a self-published author career, or I suppose any entrepreneurial creative project or endeavor. Okay, so technically anyone can upload a video and start a channel, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I suppose I'm referring to a channel that has a purpose or a design, some sort of objective, and not just uploading your family vacation, which is awesome, but not exactly the type of YouTube channels that we see on a regular basis that continue to put out weekly videos, which is what I'm attempting to do here. When I first began contemplating this channel, I knew that I did not want it to be another career, another responsibility, another layer of things that needed to be accomplished in the week. I wanted this to be an extension of my writing career, but also a hobby of sorts. The challenge was merging the two together in a cohesive brand and objective, which isn't really a natural fit, but I don't know, sometimes you just gotta be you. I was already doing stitching as a hobby, so if I was going to share my life with people, it made sense to smoosh together my stitching hobby with my love of science fiction, and then wrap all of that up in a design similar to what I was planning to do for the audiobooks, so that it felt like one cohesive channel. I'm hoping this strategy will work out long term, but who knows? Because this isn't a fully planned business, I'm trying to ignore the algorithms and trends and criticism and what people expect, and just stick to who I am as a sci-fi fan and as an author. I know that when it comes to YouTube, I don't want to worry about sales or views or ad dollars. I don't want this to be more work that takes away from my writing time. But I'll admit, right now, this is taking away from my writing time. Only because I'm working on getting out the chapters to my book, Uncommon, and either stitching a Stitching Sci-Fi or Making Word Monsters episode, while still learning how to do this whole YouTube thing. I'm hoping that once the bulk of the work on the chapters is done, I'll settle into a regular schedule of writing and YouTube on the side. But I'm also prepared for that to be a potential challenge. This sort of feels a lot like the adjustments that I had to make when I first started incorporating writing into my life. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you just want to pull your hair out and go and sleep for a month. The easiest part was folding YouTube into my author social media presence and marketing, which I wasn't doing a lot of to begin with, so this actually gave me a good excuse to start talking on a weekly basis or a daily basis with the people who are following me. The hard part was everything else. Becoming a self-published author meant that I had to be a bit of a self-starter. I had to learn about formatting and covers and editors, and I had to learn new software and a ton about the publishing business. Being a YouTuber is a little bit of the same. Before I ever recorded anything, I took some time watching a lot of YouTube videos about recording and audiobooks and voiceovers. The Audible YouTube channel was a huge help. I highly recommend it. They They have a ton of videos with amazing insights on narration. I then spent a little time setting up my walk-in closet as a makeshift sound booth. I didn't install acoustic tiles or hang blankets because honestly, the closet is small and packed with clothes as it is. But I did put in a little ottoman to sit down and tossed a cheap sort of throw rug thing on the hardwood floors to help with the sound. I ran a reasonably priced USB mic with an extension cord from the desktop computer in my bedroom all the way across the room and into the walk-in closet. I mounted the mic on a boom arm that stays in the closet. I didn't want to have to set up and break down the whole assembly every single time I recorded each week. I couldn't afford a second monitor to put in the closet, but I did a little workaround that I thought was kind of ingenious. I use Zoom to share my computer screen with my phone, so I can monitor the recording process, and then I have a Bluetooth mouse and a keyboard that I use to start and stop the recordings from inside the closet. Just beware that if you don't have a Zoom subscription, they only give you 45 minutes for a free meeting, so a lot of my recordings go over 45 minutes, with multiple takes and insecurities and coughing fits and everything. So the monitoring ends up stopping usually before I've finished the actual recording. But heck, it works for now. YouTube was also a big help learning how to use recording and editing software. I don't have disposable income to purchase professional software. I could have hunted down whatever was the best free software available, but I've got a Mac, and that came with GarageBand and iMovie, which was free, so that's what I used. Recording and editing audio with GarageBand was mostly intuitive with a few little quirks. For example, for some reason, a new file always loads reverb, echo, and ambiance that needs to be turned off. I have no idea why. I'm sure there are ways to make this not happen, but it happens. Eventually, I learned to save a file with these things turned off and use that as a recording template, which saves me a little annoyance each time I start to record. I also learned to record my audio straight from the mic and then add the narration voice filter during the editing process. When I edit a chapter or voiceover, I spend quite a bit of time removing mouth noises and pops and then gasps for breath between sentences. I recorded a few minutes of ambient silence in my closet and then used that to fill the gaps where my gasps were. The only problem is that for some reason, when I reopen the edited audio file, GarageBand occasionally loses the silence file. I have no idea why, but when it first happened, I had a complete heart attack and thought that I would have to re-edit the whole recording and add in new silence clips all over again. Eventually, I found out that if I just copied the original silence clip into a new layer in the edited audio file all over again, then save it, when I reopen the edited file, the silence is miraculously back, and all of the little tiny silence clips are back as well, so that was a lifesaver. Also, honestly, just the process of sitting down and recording audio was a learning experience as well. Lots of water is essential to keep my mouth moving, but tea doesn't work for me at all. It completely dries up my mouth and throat, and I am croaking in a matter of seconds. And if I don't eat at least an hour before recording, my stomach throws a major temper tantrum. It doesn't matter if it's full or empty, it just starts complaining regardless. And let me tell you, that shit is impossible to edit out. Once it gets started, my recording sessions jump from an hour to 3 hours with multiple takes nonstop just to try and work around my grumbling stomach. And if you need a mid-record snack, I do not recommend nuts. That shit will choke you out in 3 seconds flat. And can I just vent for a minute? Every single time I sit down and press record, I start coughing. It's like my brain sends out an army of microscopic itch monsters that viciously attack my throat. Other people do normal voice warm-ups, while I do a 15-minute psychological workout coughing attack before actually pressing record. Lastly, until I listened to my audio recordings, I had no idea how lazy my tongue was. I would just forget to say whole words, or slur my words together without even knowing it. It takes conscious effort to force my mouth to enunciate and read the words that are on the page. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about my attempted successes with recording video and editing in iMovie. First, I started out cheap. I have an iPhone, it records. That's what I'm using. And though it delivers adequate overhead footage, it took me a little while to make sure that my settings were right. Some of my early footage was done partially in 30 frames per second and partially in 60 frames per second. And if you would try to output the combination of the two into a single video, it produces some nasty glitches that that's it. That's what it is. You have to edit them out. So that can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. Also, apologies. I am still trying to figure out the lighting situation. Even in this video, the white thread is way too hot. I have my lighting set too high, and from the angle that I stitch at, it is really hard to see and tell whether or not it's too hot, too cold, it's just, yeah, it's a pain. I've tried a number of different lighting situations, and as of yet, I still haven't perfected it, so just please bear with me. In the beginning, it was really difficult adjusting to stitching with the fixed hoop and the overhead camera because I was used to holding my hoop while I stitched. But the more that I've been doing it, the easier it's been getting. Still, it's a little difficult to tell exactly what's going on the camera, so I think I'm going to have to do test runs probably before I actually record things from now on. I'm still trying to learn how much footage I need to film. My first few stitching sci-fi episodes started out between 8 to 5 hours of raw footage, which, that is a real pain to try and edit 8 hours down to a 20-minute video. But, it was a learning experience. I think my biggest challenge with iMovie specifically was understanding its limitations. For example, it doesn't allow more than 2 video layers to be processed. And just the animated frame around my videos is 8 video layers. So that took a little time to try and figure out how I was going to execute the vision that I wanted to create. I needed to create some type of workaround that I wouldn't have to output my videos several dozen times each time I created a video. If you've ever worked with iMovie or probably any video software, every single time you output it, it takes, if your movie is 20 minutes long, it takes almost 20 minutes to output it, at least with my computer, which takes a really long time when you add all of that up. So it took me a little while to create some merged templates that put it all together, and all I would have to do was then drop it over any video that I had recorded that week. But still, it takes me about 3 outputs before I have a video finished. I will say that having organized video libraries of pre-made assets is a huge help in iMovie. Although I couldn't create animations in iMovie, my Mac also had Keynote, which is a presentation software that I was really familiar with from my previous career, so that was a huge help in enhancing my videos as well. None of the software was particularly challenging, but it was a little time-consuming trying to make it do what I wanted it to do, which is the learning curve for launching any new endeavor, I suppose. What I think I found probably more challenging was adjusting my mindset. I used to pick up a hoop and stitch whenever I felt like I needed to chill and just listen to an audiobook. But now I'm trying to stitch something every single week. And although I enjoy embroidery, there's always a little bit of resistance that my brain does when I'm forced to do something. It starts to feel like a chore versus a fun hobby. I'm still struggling with fighting the instinct to see stitching as a responsibility, but it helps that I get to listen to a new audiobook every time I stitch. Editing videos where I have to cut down several hours into thousands of 2-second clips is so much better with a good audiobook as well. I have consumed more books since starting my channel than all of last year. But even with these little mind tricks and the excitement of doing something fun and new, I'm still very careful to monitor my energy levels and make sure that I don't let YouTube burn me out, because unfortunately I am actually very susceptible to burnout. I want to keep producing videos to entertain viewers, but I'm well aware that there are going to be times when I need to take a week off. My mental health and ability to write is more important than being a slave to the algorithm. To some degree, I suppose it's about managing my time and prioritizing me and creative freedom rather than productivity. I need to remember that editing an audiobook chapter takes far longer than editing a voiceover for a stitching video. On the other hand, editing stitching video footage takes significantly longer than an audio chapter. If I don't plan well enough, I will fill all of my time with editing and producing and have absolutely no time to spend with family or to even write. And the next thing I know, I'm so burned out that I can't do anything at all. It's been only a few weeks of doing this so far, and I've already had to manage a little bit of burnout. So I suspect this is going to probably always be a balancing act between what I need for myself and what I want to do for my career and or for the YouTube channel. But unfortunately, it's also about adjusting my expectations. I need to be more realistic in what I expect of myself. When I first started recording the audio chapters, I was nervous as hell. You could probably tell in the first few chapters I was very stiff. It was so uncomfortable trying to act out scenes or use different voices. I didn't even try to do the voices for the male characters. But by the end of the book, it was a lot easier, and I think for my next book, I'll feel much better about experimenting more with the voices and personalities of the characters. I also need to expect that things are going to go wrong. It took me weeks to get my overhead recording situation right. I went through one cheap ring light that couldn't support my phone in a horizontal position and just snapped right off. I had to buy 2 sets of adapting screws, which, shipping time and ordering, etc., that takes some time. And then the audio recordings from my old laptop were completely incompatible with my newer desktop. I tried using my boom arm to record video, and it almost pulled a shelf straight out of my wall. Then I tried it on the desk, but the video was so shaky that I was going to give someone seizures. It was one problem after another. Eventually, I just moved the boom arm into the closet for the microphone, and then I pulled out my very, very old microphone stand and rigged up a situation where I could do the overhead video recording with it. The point is, in order to get all of this done, I had to be adaptable and, for the most part, do the best that I could with what I have. I was lucky that I had some assets, but I did have to make a few minor purchases. Also, I hate to say it, but putting myself out there in front of the public means that I need to grow a thicker skin. Readers are not all the same. Not even sci-fi readers are all the same. Some readers only read in first person. Some hate to buy books with people on the cover. Some only like past tense, and some won't read any foul language at all. Some like super spicy sex scenes, and then some hate cross-genre books. It is absolutely impossible to please everyone. The same thing can be said for YouTube viewers. The people who like my sci-fi discussions probably won't like my embroidery. The viewers who like my AuthorTube content probably won't like my stitching stuff. Those who like my felt monsters might not like my audiobook chapters. Finding the right audience for the weirdness that I create is not going to happen overnight. Not everyone's going to like my videos, and not everyone is going to like my books. There is absolutely no point to catering to criticism and trends and all of the peer pressure on YouTube. It just isn't worth it. It's about being genuinely me, and hopefully people will eventually find my content and like it. Sadly, not all family and friends are the same as well. I am very lucky to have a parent who supports everything I do. She can find something good to say about whatever I create, even when it is arguably garbage that I am creating. That's not the same for everyone in my life. It can be discouraging when I spend so much time and effort on a project, and when a friend asks for the links, suddenly they just go silent. I don't expect my friends to like all of the same things that I like. I don't expect them to like the things that I create. We're friends. We are not identical twins. But what I do expect is that they should find something nice to say, even if it's something small. All it takes is, "I'm proud of you for trying something new," or I'm so impressed with how hard you worked on that project. Something, anything. But that's not always the case, and I have to respect that not everyone has the same feelings about that I do. Becoming a writer or even a YouTuber has completely changed the way that I interact with content. I used to be like most people. I didn't really like things or subscribe to things with the exception of what I wanted to consume and what I truly loved. But now, if I watch a video that obviously took more time than just throwing it up from their phone, I hit that like button. If a video really impresses me, I take some time to leave a comment. I subscribe to several channels that consistently produce good videos, but they're not in my wheelhouse of interests at all. I'm now regularly leaving reviews on books. Not under my pen name, but I'm still doing it. And I do my very best to find something good to say about every book I read. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort to help creators, and it means the world to them. I have definitely experienced a lot of attempted successes in this whole process, but I've also found a lot of joy as well. I've already said that I am loving the abundance of audiobooks I'm devouring. This has given me the opportunity to absorb books that I probably wouldn't have had the time to actually read. Also, I discovered that I really love video editing. The editing process is fun and creative, and it's so rewarding to see something come together in such a short period of time. As an author, the writing process takes so long that it's nice to be able to get that gratification of producing something and immediately having it be released. And I am really enjoying stitching my sci-fi favorites. I used to just stitch sort of abstract arty things, mandalas, or flowers, but these sci-fi stitchings are so much more fun. I like creating the designs and watching the movies over again and figuring out why I love these shows and trying to understand how they've inspired me. And on an unexpected note, listening to my book in an audio format has totally highlighted areas where my writing needs to improve. Even after so many passes with readers and editors, I still found things that were missed or bad habits that weren't as noticeable in print form. They say that when you're editing or revising, you should change the font. Some people change it to Comic Sans or something that's so wacky that errors really stand out. Others say that changing it from digital form to print form helps you see the typos and notice the flaws in your work. Now, I completely agree that hearing your book read aloud has the biggest impact on revision and editing. Okay. So with my YouTube launch life update out of the way, let's get on to things that I was reading and watching, etc. during the time that I was creating the YouTube channel. During May and June, which was when the bulk of my video creation and templates were in real full swing, I sped through 8 books from 3 different authors. The first is the Hidden Legacy novels from Ilona Andrews, which was 5 books and 1 novella. It's an urban fantasy paranormal romance series about an independent family, sort of a private investigators with magical powers who are tossed into this sort of high-powered world of magical dynasties. I really loved this series, but then I love almost everything from Ilona Andrews. I also read 2 books from Sarah J. Maas. I read The Assassin's Blade, which I believe was a prequel, but the most recent release. And then I also read Throne of Glass. Well, technically listened. They were audiobooks. It is a fantasy series about an imprisoned assassin fighting for her freedom. I still have 3 weeks until Libby delivers Book 2, Crown of Midnight. But so far, I'm enjoying the series, and it's an easy read with compelling characters, so I'll probably continue listening to this series. Then I listened to Jade City by Fonda Lee. I like the book, but I usually prefer books that have a clear main protagonist, so this one was a little different for me, but I enjoyed the premise enough that I think I'm going to keep reading this series. Unfortunately, it's about 6 weeks or something like that until Libby delivers the next book. And then while doing the stitching, I listened to The Book Thief, which was both lovely and heartbreaking. I very much enjoyed Death as the narrator. That was just pure genius. I also listened to A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. It was the first book in her Veronica Speedwell historical mystery series, which was really delightful. I normally don't read historical books or listen to historical books, but I really enjoyed it, and I think I'll keep progressing through this series. And I am currently halfway through The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. I think that's what it was. And so far, I am thoroughly enchanted by this book. Maybe just because it revolves around the book writing process and authors and unwritten works, but it is spectacular so far. From a watching perspective, during these 2 months, I went through the entire 7 seasons of Scandal. And although I really like the show, that last season, unfortunately for me, did not hold up to its previous seasons. I also finished Obi-Wan Kenobi, which I absolutely loved, but I'm one of those people that I love all of Star Wars, even the things that most diehard fans hate. I'm very lenient with canon, and I have a kind of a high tolerance for what other people usually see as flaws. I also watched 2 short series on Amazon Prime, Outer Range and Night Sky. Both had spectacular casts and great suspense that held my attention all the way through to the end of the first season. From a writing perspective, I got nothing done. Zip, zilch, nada. Not a single bit of writing. I've been doing a lot of plotting in my head and writing down some notes, but writing, nothing. Hopefully the next episode of Making Word Monsters will have more progress on my next book. Which brings us to my monster of the day. Meet Tubi, who marks the launch of my YouTube channel on June 8th of 2022. She's a little like me, literary bipolar, who can't decide if she prefers reading a book or listening to an audiobook. As my very first word monster, she's a little lumpy bumpy, and her eyes are a little off, and her headphones might be a wee wonky, but, I had fun making her, and she certainly reflects my YouTube journey to date. So I suppose mission accomplished. I hope you enjoyed this little life update. Don't forget to check out my Stitching Sci-Fi series, where I hand embroider a design themed after a beloved science fiction property, and then talk about my top 3 favorite story elements. Also, check out my free reading of Uncommon, Book 1 in the Chronicles of the Common Paranormal Science Fiction Adventure series, right here, exclusively on YouTube. Until next time, folks and friendly fiends, thank you for watching, take care, and have a cozy common day.